The film begins far out in the isolated wilderness of Canada. We are introduced to 13-year-old Renee and her father, Joseph, an experienced hunter who has spent years teaching her survival skills, especially the art of setting traps. Joseph's wife, and lives with them in this distant forest, where the family has managed to survive for years by hunting animals and selling their fur. Renee enjoys this way of living because it is the only life she has ever experienced. But lately, things have become harder. The value of animal fur has dropped, and the family now earns far less money than before. While inspecting one of the traps, Joseph discovers only a severed animal leg. The rest of the body has vanished. He instantly understands what happened. The same wolf that has been interfering with their hunting has attacked again. Tension already exists within the family, and is particularly anxious about their finances. At the trading post, the shop owner explains that wolf pelts can still bring good money, although hunting wolves is extremely risky. While there, and notices a sign advertising a house for sale and begins wondering if it might be time to leave the forest and try living a normal life in a town like other families. Outside the store, and watches a mother sending her children onto a school bus, which makes her feel that Renee deserves proper schooling and a brighter future. Living in the forest has exhausted Anne, not because she doesn't love Joseph, but because their financial struggles never seem to end. She does her best to educate Renee at home whenever possible. By evening, Joseph and Renee return from their hunt, and he continues her training, even demonstrating how to skin animals properly. During dinner, Renee brings up the wolf, revealing the secret Joseph had kept to avoid worrying Anne. Later, Anne privately asks him if they are in danger. Joseph reassures her that everything is safe and explains that the wolf is probably searching for a mate or stealing from their traps due to hunger. He also says he plans to hunt it soon, and suggests informing the conservation department, but Joseph insists they will not help. She then reveals how serious their financial problems have become. Their food supplies are running low, their income keeps decreasing, and survival is becoming more difficult. She shows him the poster advertising the house for sale, suggesting they should move to town where she could find work. Joseph refuses. The forest is their home, and hunting is the only way of life he understands. And, however, worries about Renee growing up alone with no school and no friends. Even so, Joseph refuses to consider changing their life. Early the following morning, Joseph wakes up to track the wolf. Renee, eager and excited, insists on joining him. He initially refuses because it's too dangerous, but eventually agrees on one condition: if he finds a fresh trail, she must immediately go back home. They set out together with their equipment. When Anne wakes up, she notices Renee is gone, but Joseph reassures her over the radio that Renee will return home if the situation becomes unsafe. While following the tracks, Joseph teaches Renee how to use plants and flowers to cover their scent so animals cannot detect them. Soon he finds a fresh trail and sends her back home, warning her that if she encounters any danger, she should not run but shoot instead. Renee walks back alone while Joseph continues hunting the wolf. Meanwhile, Anne heads to a nearby creek to collect water. On her way back, strange sounds from the forest frighten her, and she quickly hurries home. Renee also senses something nearby, hides with her gun ready, and realizes that the fear was caused by the wolf being close. Joseph finally spots the wolf, takes aim, and fires his gun. Renee hears the gunshot and relaxes, believing her father has killed the wolf. However, when Joseph reaches the spot, the wolf has disappeared. Instead, he discovers something far more disturbing: a severed human hand that clearly belonged to a woman. At first Joseph thinks perhaps a wolf or even a bear might have caused it, but finding only the hand deeply troubles him. Following the tracks further, he reaches a location with a chair and calls out, but receives no response. When he arrives there, it feels as if the ground disappears beneath him because what he sees is truly horrifying. Several women's bodies lie scattered there. Some appear to have been there for a long time, while others look more recent. It is clear that no animal could have done this. A human being is responsible. Joseph realizes this immediately and stands there silently, thinking. He knows he should report it to the authorities, but he fears they will force his family to leave the wilderness, since Anne and Renee would no longer be safe here. When he returns home, he hides the truth and simply says the wolf escaped. Fear now fills him, so he sets a bear trap outside the house and barely sleeps through the night. At sunrise, he returns to the location, determined to deal with the problem himself and hunt the killer. During a radio conversation, Anne senses that he is hiding something, but Joseph only tells her to be extremely careful. He refuses to return home until he catches the murderer and places additional bear traps around the area. After this moment, the movie does not reveal whether Joseph ever meets the killer. The scene then shifts to Anne and Renee at the river washing clothes. Their dog is missing, and Renee is about to enter the woods to search for him when she suddenly spots the wolf. Both of them panic, and Anne quickly pulls Renee behind her and shouts loudly, forcing the wolf to retreat. She immediately takes Renee and rushes back home. Still shaken, Renee worries about their dog, and tells her to stay inside while she takes a gun and goes alone to search the forest. Soon she discovers the dog's body, already injured by the wolf. Heartbroken, she keeps this secret from Renee, knowing the girl would not be able to handle the truth. Joseph still has not returned, and night arrives. Renee becomes worried about him as well, but Anne reassures her that Joseph is strong and will come back home, even though she hides her own fear. The next morning, Anne tries contacting Joseph through the radio, but receives no reply. Their food supplies are almost gone, so she and Renee go out to search for him. Along the way, they discover a trap containing only an animal leg, confirming that the wolf is still alive. Later, Renee notices wolf droppings, and Anne finds a woman's ring inside them, something that shocks her deeply. Anne understands the dark implication behind it, but Renee assumes the wolf simply swallowed the ring. The story then shifts to Conservation Officer Bart arriving at his office. Inside, his coworker Lucy is speaking on the phone with a driver whose vehicle has hit a bear, and she assigns the case to Bart. After dealing with it, he drives back and notices an abandoned car by the roadside but decides to ignore it for the moment. When he returns to the office, he finds Anne waiting for him, and explains that Joseph is missing and shows the ring she found. Lucy reassures her that hunters sometimes stay away longer than expected. Bart explains that their home lies outside federal jurisdiction, so filing a missing report could create legal problems if the land is not officially approved for living. And then asks about the wolf, and Lucy explains that wolves hunt by nature and cannot be controlled because the forest is their territory. Hearing this leaves Anne feeling hopeless. Bart admits he does not know how he can help. Feeling embarrassed, Anne asks if they could spare some food because they have none left. Back at home, she buries her dog alone while still hiding the truth about how it died. Soon afterward, Anne hears strange sounds outside and becomes frightened. Inside the house, Renee hears a gunshot. Some time later, Anne returns carrying a fawn she accidentally shot. Renee is upset that such a small animal was killed, but Anne explains that since it has already happened, they must use it as food. Anne does not know how to skin the animal, so Renee shows her the way Joseph taught her. That night, they finally have a proper meal. Later, Anne hears something over the radio and thinks Joseph is trying to contact her, but there is no response. Near midnight, Renee wakes her, saying she heard their dog outside. Anne checks with a gun in her hand but soon realizes the sound is not coming from a dog. It is the voice of a human crying in pain. Thinking it might be Joseph, she quickly runs into the forest. But the person she finds is not Joseph. It is an unknown man, severely injured and groaning in agony. Seeing the wounded stranger in such terrible condition frightens Anne, yet she immediately decides to help him. She drags him back to the house on a small sled and removes his clothes so she can treat his injuries. His stomach and leg are badly wounded, and he has a music player with him. By morning, Renee approaches the stranger while he is sleeping. But the moment he opens his eyes, she panics and wakes Anne, and gives him some water. To Renee, he is just a stranger, and she cannot understand why her mother brought him into their home. She reminds Anne that Joseph always warned her never to trust people they do not know. This moment reveals that Renee's survival skills were built from a very young age, and explains that even though the man is a stranger, they cannot abandon him while he is suffering. Joseph would have helped him as well. After saying that, she carefully stitches his wounds. Meanwhile, Bart drives along the same road again and notices the same abandoned car. This time he stops, looks around the area, and calls out, but no one answers. He writes down the license plate number and leaves. Back at the cabin, the injured man finally regains full consciousness. His name is Lou, but he has no memory of how he ended up there or who attacked him, and suggests that perhaps the same wolf causing trouble in their area might have injured him too. When she asks why he was in the forest, Lou says he is a photographer who came to capture pictures. His car stopped working, so he started walking to search for help. It is a decision he now deeply regrets. This confirms that the car Bart saw earlier belongs to Lou and tells him that he needs to reach a hospital to receive proper treatment. Their truck is parked some distance away, so they will have to travel on foot. Lou worries that the wolf may still be nearby, but Anne says they have no other option. She places him on a sled and begins pulling him toward the road, but the pain quickly becomes unbearable, and it almost feels like Lou does not want to leave. He asks her to stop. So they head back to the house, and reassures him that Joseph will help once he returns. But until they know where Joseph is, they must handle everything themselves. She and Renee start setting every trap they own around the cabin. At Renee's suggestion, they keep a fire burning near the house to scare the wolf away. Meanwhile, Bart continues investigating the abandoned car. Something about the situation feels suspicious. At the office, several posters of missing girls can be seen, most likely the same victims Joseph discovered. Bart files a report about the car, but processing it will take 2 days. Thinking about Anne and the ring she showed him, he tells Lucy he wants to check the area himself. He drives out, searches through the forest, and eventually reaches the location where the bodies were found. The sight leaves him shocked. He tries to contact Lucy, but the radio signal does not work in that area. As he steps forward, his foot suddenly snaps into one of Joseph's traps. Crying out in pain, he struggles, and then another trap clamps down on his hand. He realizes he is in serious danger, especially with only about an hour left before his shift ends. Lucy will soon leave the office and go home. Bart cannot call for help using the radio. The next morning, Lucy receives a message from his wife saying he never returned home the night before. Concerned, Lucy understands that Bart might be in trouble and drives to the location he mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, Anne is out in the forest checking the traps she set. She catches a rabbit and breaks its neck to use as food, but doing so fills her with sadness. Missing Joseph deeply, she tries the radio again. Suddenly, she hears a faint signal somewhere nearby. She follows the sound, and what she discovers stops her in shock. Joseph's body is lying there. She collapses beside him and begins to cry. A single look at his injuries tells her that an animal could not have done this. Then she remembers Lou. Everything suddenly makes sense. Lou must have fought Joseph that night, which explains why Lou was injured. And Lou must also be the same killer responsible for the murdered women. Horrified by the realization, Anne runs back toward home as fast as she can, knowing Renee is there alone. Elsewhere, Lucy arrives at the location where Bart had parked earlier. After suffering through the entire night, Bart no longer has the strength to shout, so he repeatedly fires his gun. Hearing the gunshots, Lucy finally manages to locate him. She is shocked by Bart's condition, and the scene around him is terrifying. She reassures him and goes to call for assistance. Soon the police arrive, and when they discover blood traces, they begin following the trail. The story then returns to Anne, who reaches home and quietly taps on Renee's window to get her attention without making noise. She understands how dangerous Lou is, but Renee is not inside her room, and tries to stay silent, yet Lou is already awake and alert. She slowly enters the house and walks to Renee's bedroom, where Renee is sleeping. As Anne softly calls her name, Lou suddenly attacks and presses Anne's own gun against her throat, choking her until she loses consciousness. Renee witnesses everything but is powerless to stop him. When Anne wakes up, she is injured. Lou kept her alive only because he wants the keys to the truck. He says Renee will remain safe if Anne tells him where the keys are, and shows him the location and then asks where Renee is. Lou insists that he never intended to harm them and blames Joseph, saying none of this would have happened if Joseph had never discovered that place. Lou burns anything that might prove he was ever there. Then he attempts to force himself on Anne, revealing that he is a twisted predator who attacks women before killing them. From this moment, the film becomes extremely disturbing. Lou plans to assault Anne as well, but she finds a brief chance to fight back and strikes his face with a trap, making him scream in pain. Anne grabs another object and hits him hard enough that he collapses to the ground and loses consciousness. She immediately rushes into her daughter's room to check on her. The film does not show it directly, but Renee has already become the victim of this monster. The moment Anne realizes this, her face completely changes. She suffers a total mental breakdown. Losing her husband and now her daughter destroys her completely. Meanwhile, Lucy and the other officers notice smoke rising in the distance and head toward it. The scene returns to Anne, who is emotionally shattered. With nothing left in her life, only one thing remains: taking revenge on the monster. She drags Lou into the shed where they usually skin animals, turns on his music player, and hangs him up like prey. And no longer hesitates. She begins treating him the same way animals were once treated, working on his skin exactly as Joseph had taught her. Lou screams in terrible pain, but Anne shows absolutely no emotion. The entire scene is extremely disturbing to watch. By that time, the police have arrived. Anne walks outside carrying Lou's face and throws it down in front of them. When the officers enter the shed, the sight inside is horrifying. Lou is still alive, barely breathing. Everything that happened was horrific. But for Anne, this act of revenge almost felt necessary. We then see her step outside and sit on the porch, completely empty and shaken. She never imagined she could do something like this. But when someone loses everything, the fire of revenge can push them beyond their limits. Broken and devastated, Anne sits silently. This becomes the final image before the film ends. At the beginning, the story feels like a simple survival tale where the main threat is a wolf. But by the end, it becomes clear that the most dangerous creature is always a human being. Everything finally makes sense. The wolf kept returning to that place because Lou had been leaving bodies there, attracting the animal again and again. Lou had been committing these crimes for a long time, but in the end, he faced the punishment he truly deserved.